We will begin shortly. Actually, Honorable Dr. Justice Chandrachud will be joining us shortly. He had to visit somewhere else and he will be joining us. But he requests us to start with our program. So I begin with the proceedings for the day. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are gathered here today for the virtual book release of the book My Journey with Law and Justice, authored by Professor Dr. Balram K. Gupta, published by Law and Justice Publishing Company. Our distinguished guests today include Honorable Mr. Justice Dr. D.Y. Chandrachud, Honorable Mr. Justice Suryakant, Honorable the Chief Justice of Punjab and Haryana High Court, Justice Ravi Shankar Jha, Honorable Mr. Justice Amol Ratan Singh, Honorable Justice Madan Lukur, Professor Emeritus Upendra Bakshi, and Dr. Manish Arora from the Law and Justice Publishing Company. I welcome the other honorable judges of the Punjab and Haryana High Court who are attending the event, the legal co-parsonery, family, friends, and the academia to this virtual book release. Professor Dr. Balram Gupta wears many hats, and as a daughter, I can vouch for that. He is a legal scholar, an educator of minds, a distinguished senior advocate, and as Mr. Anil Malhotra, our senior advocate, describes him in his recent review of his book, he is the keeper of the Eden Garden of law. He is truly the Mozart of law. I now invite Professor Dr. Gupta to speak to you about his 325-page magnum opus. Professor Dr. Balram Gupta.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shruti Bedi. Honorable Mr. Justice Dr. Dhananjay Chandrachud, Justice Suryakant, Justice Ravi Shankar Jha, Chief Justice Punjab and Haryana High Court, Justice Amol Ratan Singh, Judge Punjab and Haryana High Court, Justice Madan Lukur, a former judge of the Supreme Court and presently Judge Supreme Court of Fiji, Professor Upendra Bakshi, Professor Emeritus, Dr. Manish Arora, and Dr. Shruti Bedi. I take it as a singular and unique honor and privilege that this distinguished panel is gracing and present at the release of my book. I could not have urged for anything more. My deep gratitude to all of you as such. Why this book? I had a moving journey for the last 55 years. From legal education to legal profession to judicial education. A continuous journey with no breaks. I have never been out of crease nor stumped as such. In cricket, we have batsmen, bowlers, fielders. But there are some players who are all-rounders, and they are batsmen, bowlers, and fielders as well. It is in that spirit that my journey is a continuous one journey as such. What I learned as an academic, I practiced at the bar. And my experience, both academic and the bar experience, equipped me to take the challenge of judicial education. And therefore, it has been a meaningful journey. I have been a Rotarian of 1977 vintage. Paul Harris was a lawyer who was the founder of Rotary. There have been many presidents of Rotary International with legal background as academics and judges. Throughout my journey, the Rotary values have been the barometer, the guiding barometer to guide me into this particular realm for long many years. In recording my journey, I kept one thing in my mind. There's no journey which is not filtered with roughs and toughs of life. I had challenges, I encountered them, I surmounted them. And ultimately, intentionally, I thought I should record only the positive aspects and not to refer to anything which is negative in nature. Why? The reason is very obvious. Positive minds, positive writings are lasting writings. They are the living writings as such. My book has 4 parts. Part 1 deals with my journey, the role that I have played, different roles that I have played. I recorded that. It is autobiographical. Part 2 and part 4 are essays, 25 essays, some long, some short essays. These essays are also based upon my experience in the academic and the professional fields as such. And during this long journey, I had the opportunity of meeting the best of minds, the academics, the lawyers, the judges. They influenced my thinking, my writings, and also charted my journey in that particular background. Therefore, I have drawn the life sketches of 15 of them so that they could be the beacon light and the torch bearers for the future generations as such. When I was offered to go to the National Judicial Academy, I met my Chief Justice, the then Chief Justice, Justice A.K. Sikri. And I shared with him what my son told me. Papa, these are your harvesting years and you are running away from the profession. Justice Sikri told me, you know, Balram, why have you been picked up for this responsibility? You have grown in that environment which is required for taking up this responsibility. 2, you are a mix of academics and professional aspects which are required. Prior to me, there were 3 directors of the National Judicial Academy, all 3 pure academicians. Before I completed my term, the rules for appointment of the director of the National Judicial Academy were revisited, and it was made clear that it is the court experience as lawyer and judges which would make a person suitable for this particular responsible position. I have enjoyed recording my journey with a hope you would also enjoy reading it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Gupta, for sharing your story through this book with us. And in the end, I think we all will become stories. He does, of course, remain unstumped, like he said. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for the book release. A virtual book release is, after all, virtual, and therefore I would request the dignitaries today to kindly hold the book on the screen to mark the release of the book. I would request the Academy to take a photograph of this moment. Thank you so much for bearing with us during these virtual times. His students describe his intellect as intimidating. His thick white crop of hair is the envy of many. His vivacious writings, interspersed with wit and humor, make him a creative jurisprudent. He is indeed a legal giant in the contemporary times. Ladies and gentlemen, I speak of none other than Professor Upendra Bakshi. May I ask him to please share a few thoughts on this occasion.
So you need to unmute yourself.
I think Professor Upendra Bakshi might be having a little bit of a technical problem. And I apologize for this, for the technical issue. Maybe we can ask Honorable Mr. Justice Amol Ratan Singh, Judge, Punjab and Haryana High Court, President of the Board of Governors of the Chhattisgarh Judicial Academy, to share a few thoughts with us. He is persistent and patient for the cause of justice, and I'm sure he would be happy to share a few words. Honorable Mr. Justice Amol Ratan Singh.
Thank you, Shruti. Well, Justice Chandrachud presently is not with us, so Justice Surikant, Justice Madan Lokur, Justice Ravi Shankar Jha, Professor Upendra Bakshi, and of course, my revered teacher, Dr. Balram Gupta, and all other participants, all of the people present here. A very good morning to everybody. For a student, it is indeed a matter of great honor to be present at the release of a wonderful, as Mrs. Shruti Bedi put it, magnum opus that he has penned down. And therefore, I'm indeed privileged to be here on this occasion with Dr. Gupta, my teacher, my revered teacher, my mentor at the time when I was in the university, in his presence and of course presence of all dignitaries here. I must confess I haven't been able to go through the whole book as yet, but of course I have started it, and the part which I relate to most is the first part, which is his years with the Punjab University, because that is where I first met Dr. Gupta and was privileged, as I said, to have been his student in the law college. He taught us two subjects, company law and administrative law. And I can say with complete honesty that I think those were the two most attended classes by all students, with law students at that stage not being so serious about this, about actually attending classes. Those were two classes which one enjoyed attending, which one looked forward to, and which one attended with the greatest of diligence. Not just because he made the topics he was teaching interesting, which of course he did, but he put a kind of life into the class. While we were attending the lectures, it was as if one was, it's very, very difficult to put it in words, not attending a class, but attending a function where one participated and thoroughly enjoyed oneself in the process of actually learning. So I am indeed honored to be here when for the release of my revered teacher's wonderful book. And of course, I will, during the course of the year or the course of the next month or so, go through it fully with pleasure. And I have to relate a particular incident, or part of the reason why I eventually joined the legal profession. Because even after I had actually joined law college or the Department of Laws, I had not really made up my mind to become a lawyer. It was part of an academic journey, really. After I had finished, I went to Dr. Gupta at his home in Sector 25, Chandigarh. And he asked me, he says, have you joined the bar? I said, I have not as yet. He says, why not? I said, I'm not very sure whether I want to practice or not. He says, I've never seen you taking parts in debates and declamations, but I have seen you interacting in class. And I assure you that you will make a good lawyer. Those words actually turned the tide for me, you can say, where I actually thought of seriously entering the profession, though I did not enter it seriously for a few years thereafter also. But that's what actually put me thinking that, yes, this is a profession I can actually join. And that's how I became a lawyer in the first place, took my license, and initially visited the courts sporadically over a few years, and then seriously joined the profession. So I have Dr. Gupta to thank for being my mentor in the legal profession and for being a wonderful teacher and a guide throughout the years, even thereafter. Thank you, sir. And it is with great pleasure and enthusiasm that I look forward to reading the book completely. I have gone through the part which was most closest to my heart. That is your years with Punjab University. Actually, Chandigarh grew with you. You were older than Chandigarh, actually. So not you grew with Chandigarh, but Chandigarh grew with you. And of course, yes, your reminiscences about what Chandigarh was then and what it is now, what the university was then, what it is like now. And it was a pleasure going through it last night and before that. And well, I don't think I have any more words to say, except that thank you, sir. Thank you very much indeed for being a wonderful teacher and a great mentor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Justice Amol Ratan Singh, for your heartfelt words. And indeed, there is a lot of wisdom I can see on the screen with our legal luminaries today gracing the occasion. And now, over to the legal giant of our contemporary times, Professor Emeritus Upendra Bakshi. Sir, may I ask you to share your thoughts today with us?
Thank you indeed, Shruti, distinguished justices. Balram, the bridegroom of the day, Manish, distinguished participants, and friends. It is said about giants, I think, that it is good to have the strength of a giant, but one prays to Lord, whoever she is, that one would not have occasion to use it. I neither have the strength nor the occasion to use it. And therefore the word legal giant perplexes, but I promise to think some more about it. The Chandigarh Law Faculty is a mysterious entity to me. Although I've interacted with so many of my colleagues, including Balram. And the mystery begins, I will not reveal where it ends, but the mystery begins with the very naming of the faculty. It's only faculty in India, perhaps Asia, and perhaps the world, which is called the Faculty of Law and not Faculty of Law. Being a Jewish student, I asked Professor Shivdar as to why the faculty was named as in plural. He had some sort of response. I was very curious whether Jeremy Bentham influenced in naming. Because Jeremy Bentham said, one should never talk about law, but laws. In reality, there is not a single law, but there are different kinds of law. Parasivan, the great Parasivan, came to my rescue by saying, there is certainly a distinction between public law and private law, and he was a great family lawyer, besides being a public lawyer himself. And Paras said to me, answer is very easy. Faculty of Law stands for public law as well as private law. I don't know what answer did Balram give to me. I look forward to some answer in his book. When I read it closely, I've read it rather hurriedly. And I am a very good judicial company as far as reading the book is concerned. But let me tell you that I've rarely read as lucid a biography, which I read once. I propose to study a second time with a view to finding my answer. Many questions and many answers. But Balram is lucid. As Professor Hart said of Professor John Austin, that John Austin was clearly wrong many a time. But his virtue was that he was clearly wrong. And I add, rather than deviously right. And that compliment extends to Balram as well. He is rarely clearly wrong, but he is never deviously right. He writes lucidly, almost biblically, as Lord Denning of India, I call him, but he writes not always in jest. And therefore, I'm very pleased to be on this occasion, although there is not much time to expound on his policies. He's a very eminent teacher. He has jostled with eminent lawyers, the bar. He has shaped the destiny of national legal education, both at Chandigarh Judicial Academy and at the National Judicial Academy in Bhopal. But both places, he has been a highly valued colleague and a mentor to many people, including future judges. He has contributed to the bar himself, but also to his brother, Jawahar, and subsequent co-partners, if I may say so, who joined the bench. Tuti, of course, has joined his beloved old faculty, and I'm sure will bring a lot of luster to the chosen profession that he has already adopted so well. And I have before me the learned introduction by Justice Loku, who recalls his career at the bar, at the Judicial Academy, and at the Faculty of Laws. But he has said in his introduction, and Balram McCandless noted consistently and well said, that there would be a sequel to this biography, which would recount number of repartees and encounters with the bench while he was at bar. and how we handle this difficult and delicate situation arising from argumentation at the bar. We all wait for a subsequent companion work to this. As a teacher, Balram has inestimably contributed to the growth of the bar and the bench, as I already said. And this autobiography illustrates not the perils of autobiography. There are few autobiographies of law teachers themselves, which I think illustrate the perils of writing. But Balram is distinctive in the sense his autobiography tells us the promises of writing. It's quite an art to write an autobiography. And one realizes the value of this art when one reads this book. I have only one early incident in mind. In a way in which he introduces this coming from Punjab and Patiala Pig in the morning. It's too early in the morning. It's famous for what it does early in the morning. Balram speaks of his abstinence. He never touched this stuff. I don't know whether to compliment him or mourn the loss that he has suffered. I don't know. But I think the way he does it is extraordinary, because he was accosted by 5 great law teachers from Rajasthan in the business class where he was privileged to sit. And the request to Balram was not for instruction in jurisprudence, but spiriting away a few bottles when Balram proclaimed its virtue of abstinence. I don't know what happened to the gentlemen, whether they studied law deeply as further as a result, or they abstained from studying law, but I don't know that. I think, well, that Justice Loco spoke of may as well explain what happened to those men in life of law. And we can then make out the importance of the virtues that he had developed and he spoke about. But I want to make a general point, and the point is that the contribution of a teacher to the making of careers at the bar and the bench, and the indefatigable work they perform for rule of law and democratic republicanism on the bench and the bar. The influence of law teachers on these happenings has yet to be fully delineated. And I hope Balram's work begins to mark this kind of future endeavor. The second thing I want to say, and very briefly, I'm sorry I've taken a lot of time already, but Balram, in my view, in my experience, always expressed his democratic disagreements and professional disagreements in a very quiet and a gentle disposition. He never described, as I cannot help doing, but he can help doing that, never described a spade as a bloody shovel, which sometimes is a bloody shovel, but he described the spade as a spade and then restrained himself. He did not think, for example, with the so-called great Professor William Dicey, the rule of law wala, we are very fond of, but has not been heard of in the mother country ever since the 19th century. William Dicey once wrote in his Law and Public Opinion in England. It was considered a great book, perhaps it is. But William Dicey said the legislatures and judges should never make one mistake, namely a mistake of weighing butcher's meat in diamond scale. Public opinion, a man who writes a 400 6-page book on public opinion and law in England in 19th century, towards the end has a very elitist opinion. And he says public opinion is like butcher's meat. We have Article 19(1)(a), which prescribes freedom of speech and dissent. And many justices have described this in turn as the pillar, basic cornerstone of a democracy, and rightly so. And to say that it is like butcher's meat is saying a bit too much. And although Balram does not say it in so many words, and that's my final point, he always believes, and this autobiography is a valuable testimony to that, testament to this fact, that true education brings humility and not arrogance of power. And Balram's message in this sense is that what is important in democracy is a genuinely egalitarian dialogue, a dialogue in which different people pursue truth through public reason. And that, I think, the mainstay of this book. Different ways of disagreeing. But there's only one way of being disagreeable, and that is to disrespect the other view. And Balram never was disagreeable in that sense. I think this rectitude which marks Balram is decisively important in a teaching career and in all public offices, if I may say so. And this rectitude, an ounce of this rectitude is worth tons of reform. 1 ounce of the rectitude changes the whole scenario. I may say in conclusion that the gift of Balram, being that he is and he will remain, and he chose to be, the gift of his being is also a quiet gift of Mrs. Balram Gupta, whom I had the privilege of knowing as a simple but a powerful voice in the voyage of his life. There is, in a sense, a composite achievement that is not fully taken account of when people talk about the greatness and rectitude and responsibility of Balram. And perhaps I want to repair slightly on this occasion that ignoble omission. Thank you, Balram.
Thank you so much, Professor Bakshi. Well, I would say cheers to the Patiala peg of your words of wisdom and wit today morning. Thank you, sir. Indeed grateful to you. Honorable Mr. Justice Madan Lokur, former Judge, Supreme Court of India, and Judge presently of the Supreme Court of Fiji. He is a judge who gave meaning to the opening words of our Constitution, "We the people." A judge who contributed spectacularly to the field of judicial review and continues to do so even today. Ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Mr. Justice Madan Lokur, before you.
Yeah, thank you, Shruti, and good morning to everybody. Justice Suryakant, Chief Justice Jha, Justice Amol Ratan Singh, Professor Bakshi, my teacher as a law student, and Professor Balram Gupta, my teacher as a judge during the years when he was there in the Judicial Academy, and of course Dr. Manish Arora, and all the participants today. I first met Professor Balram Gupta when he was on his way to Bhopal. He called me up and said he wanted to meet me because he had been selected as the director for the National Judicial Academy. So I was very happy to meet the new director, having been associated with the Judicial Academy at that time for about 10 years, and now it's been more than 20 years that I've been associated with the National Judicial Academy. So it was a great pleasure for me to welcome Professor Balram Gupta to my residence on his way to the National Judicial Academy. We had a chat about what could be done, what has been done, and what should be done to improve the quality of justice and justice delivery so that it is more meaningful to litigants, to the people, and to the country. When Professor Balram Gupta was in charge of the Judicial Academy, I had occasion to visit the Academy on several occasions as a resource person, and on a couple of occasions also as a student in connection with other programs where there were other resource persons. And during my interaction with Professor Balram Gupta for those years, I found that he was a person who donned, as Shruti said, many hats. He was a teacher, a professor in Punjab University, and a very successful one at that, as we have heard Justice Amol Ratan Singh tell us. He was a lawyer, a very successful lawyer who perhaps gave up the, well, if one might say, the harvesting years of his legal profession. He was a judicial educator par excellence. I know because I attended several of the programs at Bhopal and also regional programs in other parts of the country, which were mentored by Professor Balram Gupta. And finally, as a scholar, someone who wrote some delightful essays and continues to do so, by the way, and which are of immense interest to many of us who are there in the legal fraternity. It was a pleasure for me to, and an honor, if I may say so, to be asked to write the foreword for his book, which is semi-autobiographical, the first part of the book being autobiographical. But I found that he has written some things about judicial education. In fact, a large part of the book is dedicated to his views on judicial education in the form of essays. And there is a lot to learn, that we as judges or members of the legal fraternity who hope to become judges can learn from these essays. And I would request the honorable judges who are present today to go through it, because there is a lot of wisdom in what he has said, and his experiences really count for a lot, because as the director of the National Judicial Academy, he had occasion to meet hundreds of, if not thousands of judges from across the country, not only in Bhopal, but also during the regional conferences that he had in different parts of the country. So there is therefore a huge amount of learning which can only be for the benefit of the justice delivery system. His essays are also a major part, the fourth part of his book, and it's very enjoyable reading all those essays, including his interactions with some legal luminaries. One used to hear about some of these greats as a student or as a young lawyer, but Professor Balram Gupta has given life, though in a few pages only, about some of these legal luminaries. And that is why I felt that it would be good if we are able to get a sequel from Professor Balram Gupta, so that we as lawyers, as students of law, can learn from those who are far more enlightened than all of us. So I wish you all the best, Professor Balram Gupta, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. Two more things I would just like to say very briefly is one sentence which Professor Balram Gupta has mentioned in the preface. He says, "I have enjoyed living my journey." I think that is very, very important. Whatever you do, whether you're a teacher, a professor, a lawyer, a judicial educator, or a scholar, enjoy whatever you're doing, or a judge. Enjoy whatever you're doing, and I think that's a very important lesson which Professor Gupta mentions in his preface. The other very important thing that he mentions, which I think brings out his philosophy in one sentence, is the last sentence in the preface, when he says, "Good nature is the richest fruit of every human life." That's what Professor Balram Gupta epitomizes, good nature. And that's why he was a successful professor, successful lawyer, successful judicial educator, and a wonderful scholar. So really, thank you very much, Professor Balram Gupta, for enriching the life of so many of us. And I hope you will continue to do so with a sequel and continue to write such wonderful essays. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Justice Madan Lokur, for your warm words and insightful thoughts on this event today, the book release. We really, truly enjoyed listening to you, and thank you also for a captivating foreword to the book. Honorable Mr. Justice Ravi Shankar Jha, the Chief Justice of the Punjab and Haryana High Court and the Patron-in-Chief of the Chandigarh Judicial Academy. He is a gentleman judge who is both humble and elegant in his pursuit of justice. Sir, may I request you to share your thoughts today? Justice Ravi Shankar Jha.
Honorable Justice Suryakant, Judge Supreme Court of India, Justice Lokur, Justice Amol Ratan Singh, Professor Emeritus Bakshi Saab, Professor Balram Gupta ji, and all those who've today joined in this virtual book release function. A very good morning to all of you. I have been here in Punjab for 2 years and few months plus, and have known Justice Professor Gupta for a short time. But I feel very proud and privileged today to be a part of this book release function. Proud because Professor Gupta is our very own Director Academics of the Chandigarh Judicial Academy. He's part of us. It makes us extremely proud. Privileged because I am being the patron-in-chief of the academy, by default a part of this function, fortuitously being the Chief Justice here. Otherwise, probably I would never have had the privilege of sharing the dais or such a function with such great legal luminaries. Professor Gupta, as Justice Lokur has so beautifully put it in his foreword, and Justice Singh has just told you, is a wonderful person and probably has achieved so much in life which takes probably 2 or 3 births to do. Anybody else in his place, I mean, he's been a professor of law, senior advocate, a judicial educator, and a professor emeritus. And anybody else writing a book would have spent volumes and volumes upon writing about himself, his achievements, the hardships and the hard work and study, etc., that he has put in and all that. Having gone through this book, the one thing that struck me, as Professor Bakshi put it, was the humility of Professor Gupta. He has confined whatever he has achieved to just 1/4 part of the book. That's the first part, which is the autobiographical part of the book. And there too, if you would read it, you will find that it's simple narration of facts. As he himself put it, he has not talked about anything negative in the book. It shows tremendous humility on his part. A person who has achieved so much could have written volumes about himself, but even when he writes a book, confines personal narrations to just 1/4 part of the book. It is said, Vidya dadati vinayam. Knowledge and wisdom brings humility. Very chosen few are blessed with this by God, because knowledge brings arrogance. But in the case of Justice Gupta, it's wonderful to see that all his hard work, his nearly 6 decades of hard work with education, has brought so much of humility to him. Another thing that I came across here when I met people is that the wonderful words and the praise that they have for Professor Gupta as a teacher, as a mentor, as a guide, as a judicial educator. We have a living example here, Justice Singh himself in this very function saying that Professor Gupta was his mentor, the one who actually influenced him to join the profession. We have him as a judge. We are privileged to have Justice Singh as a judge of the High Court today. And probably if what Justice Singh is saying is right, we owe it to Professor Gupta. It is said, Agyana timirandhasya jnananjala shalakaya chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai shri guruve namah. A guru is one, a teacher is one who guides the student from darkness to the light of wisdom by opening his eyes with a collyrium stick and of knowledge. If Professor Gupta has been able to do this for so many people, he truly enjoys, and rightly so, the position of a venerable teacher. On going through this book, I find that perhaps the one thing about which Professor Gupta is most passionate is his role as a judicial educator. And the part 2 of the book, he has segregated, divided this topic into various heads and written essays on them. I think they're most valuable. And the gist of what he actually wants to convey, if I've been able to rightly understand, is the judicial education is all about making a good human being so that he turns into a good judge. He has taken us through the steps, the requirements, and the necessary things that are required to be done, and which play a significant role in changing a law student into a judge. The journey from the classroom to the courtroom, as he himself puts it. And I think, to my mind, this book is going to be a compulsory and a valuable asset to all judicial academies. In fact, I feel it's kind of a handbook for all judicial educators, because it is written by a person who is, like he himself put it, has experience as a senior advocate, as a professor of law, and a judicial educator. So the finer nuances of judicial education have been beautifully brought out by him in his book. And to my mind, it is going to be a tremendous addition and a compulsory addition to all judicial academies, law faculties, as well as a necessary read for judges and lawyers. This work that has been undertaken by him, Professor Justice Lokur, even in his foreword has mentioned that he should come up with a sequel. Whether he does it or not, I feel that he needs to be greatly congratulated for whatever he's already done by giving us this wonderful book. His thoughts on such wonderful people that he's met throughout his career, his opinion about certain wonderful clinching judicial issues, and of course, as I said, his wisdom regarding judicial education. I wish him all the best. I congratulate him for this work. I pray that God gives him and us the privilege of his continued contribution to judicial education for 100 years. Jivema Sharada Shatam. I feel privileged to be part of the function of launching and releasing this book by Professor Gupta. Thank you. Thank you so much. Jai.
Thank you, Honorable Justice Ravi Shankar Jha, for your lucid insights into Professor Gupta's legal innings. And indeed, I think we have another scholar with us, because Sanskrit, being the language of the Devas, was never easy to master. Honorable Mr. Justice Suryakant, Judge, Supreme Court of India. His understanding of the culture of law can be described by two adjectives: brilliant and compelling. As an intellectual liberal, unbound by the boundaries, he pursues his constitutional vision for the people of this nation. Ladies and gentlemen, may I present to you Honorable Mr. Justice Suryakant.
My brother and dear friend, Justice Dr. D.Y. Chandrachud, probably he is yet to join us. My old associate and a guide and a very respectable person for me in my personal life, Justice Madan B. Lokur, Chief Justice Ravi Jha, Justice Amol Ratan Singh, Professor Upendra Bakshi, Professor Dr. Balram Gupta, esteemed members of the bar, academicians, Dr. Manish Arora as a representative of the publisher, and my other dear friends. It's my pleasure to be virtually present among all of you for the launch of a book that not only chronicles the journey of a seasoned legal luminary, but also gives deep insights into the intricate relationship between the law, human rights, judges, and justice. Dr. Shruti Bedi and then Justice Lokur have very eloquently pointed out the multiple contributions made by Professor Gupta in the field of legal education as a senior advocate and later as a judicial trainer, which all are unparalleled. I have closely seen Professor Gupta playing these different roles, partly as a member of the bar and then as a judge of Punjab and Haryana High Court. I can say he is well known for his commitment to the dignity of legal profession and for his sincerity as a judicial trainer. This book comes at a very opportune time when we have recently celebrated the 73rd anniversary of adopting the Indian Constitution. It is time to pause and reflect on the transformative role of our Constitution, the law, and the courts in our country. Unlike many other instruments, our Constitution is conceived as a social document going beyond the standard norms of governance. While Professor Gupta has written in depth about the metamorphic role of our Constitution, I was particularly intrigued by the chapter on judicial review and the Constitution. The author has rightly distanced himself from the Western debates on the role and the legitimacy of judicial review. In our country, judicial review and activism were conceived out of the necessity so as to bring about more accountability and to ensure that government organs adhere to the boundaries of constitutional discipline. The process of judicial review over the time has become the foremost tool to connect the people to the Constitution. This continuous endeavor has enabled the courts to develop a rich bounty of constitutional jurisprudence and ensure that our Constitution continues to be a living organic document. The courts have, by adopting innovative mechanisms, addressed various socio-economic issues. Hyper-technicalities like locus standi have been diluted so that public-spirited individuals be allowed to represent the interest of the economically deprived citizens who otherwise may either be unaware of their rights or may find it difficult to have access to courts. The other chapter which I liked in Professor Gupta's book is Part B, which talks about shaping the judges. Speaking for myself, the issue of training judges and judicial officers is a problematic area. We may candidly ask ourselves whether the objective behind setting up judicial academies has been optimized. An objective evaluation will make us to realize the deficiency of qualified trainers. Resultantly, the district judiciary, which is the foundational platform to deliver justice to the masses, is not adequately sensitized on the value of humane approach, the plight of poor litigants, and also on the expectations of the elder members of the bar. Issues such as when and where to entertain a suit or the art of writing judgment are some of the core areas which should draw attention of our judicial academies. Today, fortunately, Justice Lokur is present with us, who has been closely associated with Commonwealth Judicial Education Institute at Halifax, Canada. I believe he can play a pivotal role in the interplay between the institute, that is CJA, our National Judicial Academy, and state judicial academies, so that the qualitative exposure and professional ability of CJEI in shaping a judge can help sharpen the skills of our judicial trainers. Furthermore, the National Judicial Academy and state judicial academies need to collaborate and evolve a uniform pattern of training with a focus towards the litigant public and those who are in urgent need of judicial intervention. knowing the time constraint. Lastly, with this book in my hand, I believe the author correctly remarked that there is a dearth of biographies written by judges and other legal luminaries that would help young lawyers in the success of their professional journey. I firmly believe that this book will go a long way to bridge this gap. Thank you. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, Honorable Mr. Justice Suryakant. Your vision indeed for the future of judicial education in this country remains unparalleled. And thank you, sir, for whetting the appetite of the people for buying this book. Honorable Mr. Justice D.Y. Chandrachud stands tall as the stalwart of the Indian judiciary. He is a trendsetter whose innovative judgments establish justice. An erudite legal luminary known for his brilliant exposition on shaping the legal jurisprudence. I would say he is a judge who is endowed with the charisma of a Nobel laureate. Ladies and gentlemen, may I present to you Honorable Justice Dr. D.Y. Chandrachud.
Thank you very much for the very warm introduction. A very good morning to my own teacher and guru to a generation of Indian students, lawyers and judges, Professor Upendra Bakshi, to whom I bow in salutation this morning, my distinguished colleague, Justice Suryakant, Chief Justice Ravi Jha, Justice Samol Ratan Singh, my very distinguished former colleague and predecessor on the E-Committee of the Supreme Court, Justice Madan Lokur, all the other dignitaries, and of course, what we would call in Marathi, the Utsav Murti, as we say in Marathi, the reason for today's function, Professor Balram Gupta and distinguished dignitaries. Professor Balram Gupta, I wouldn't say that he's a jack of all trades. That would be belittling his unique achievements. He's dabbled with a lot of endeavors in the legal profession, but I can certainly say that he's a master of all. He has donned the robe of a professor of law, a senior advocate, and director of the National Judicial Academy, a role in which I had the opportunity of interacting with him extensively. What is very significant is that he has fared exceptionally well in every role that he has assumed in this distinguished career. I think that if there were any person whose journey of life could depict the contours of fairness and justice and the pursuit of what is fair and just, it would be Professor Balram Gupta. The book which he presented to me in Chandigarh a few weeks ago is a compilation of perhaps an autobiographical flavor, and his selective writings gives the readers a lesson on law and life. In his book, he tackles issues such as academic plagiarism and, in an eminently readable style, teaches lawyers and judges the value of professional ethics through his writings. His autobiographical account, written in short and comprehensible sentences in the Lord Denning style, would help law students and lawyers navigate through their career choices, given that the author has such a wide range of experiences of his own. As he recalls his perils as a student of law in the era before the advent of technology, when reference materials were not easily available, I was taken back to my own formative years as a student of law at the Campus Law Center, and later as a PhD student, where we had to handwrite our entire thesis. This book is thus informative, but I think what is the hallmark of the text is that it is very personal as well. This compilation of writings by Dr. Balram Gupta, as the director of the National Judicial Academy, on shaping judges and judicial propriety is a must-read for all judicial officers. He writes on how a judge, as an officer of the court, should conduct herself with humanism and compassion. He refers to the four-limb test propounded by Socrates to judge a judge, which are to hear courteously, consider soberly, answer wisely, and decide impartially. Unfortunately, today when we select or recruit judicial officers, we test them only for the information that they have at their disposal in the exams which we conduct to test the information which they have imbibed. But equally, this book tells us that judges and judicial officers, the core of judging lies in empathy, in being sensitive, and in the emotional stability which an individual as a judge possesses. That, unfortunately, is something which we don't test when we recruit judges into our system at all. In the essay titled Strengthening Judicial Culture, Professor Balram Gupta states that an open court system strengthens judicial culture, introduces discipline, and ensures the rule of law. In the course of the COVID-19 pandemic, we have been struggling to keep our systems open, consistent with the fundamental norms of open justice on which all democratic societies ought to be founded. I fully endorse the views of Professor Balram Gupta. A judge is to be judged not only by the number of judgments delivered and the rate of disposals, but also by her conduct within the walls of the courtroom. One of the flip sides of technology is that we have an emphasis on statistics because technology provides information at our fingertips. But while we have information at our fingertips, we must equally realize that the worth of a life in judging cannot merely depend upon the number of cases which waded through the hands of that particular judge, but there are more fundamental values at stake in terms of nurturing basic constitutional aspirations and ideas. When a judge begins to hear a case, she must do so with an open mind, unbridled by her own prejudices. Not only is it imperative that justice is done, but as we always say, that it is seen to be done. Justice seems to be done only when judicial proceedings are open for public viewership. This not only provides legitimacy to judicial institutions, but also furthers democratic principles of accountability. In various countries across the globe, including in India, a judge's performance is periodically evaluated. For this purpose, both qualitative and quantitative parameters are used. These indicators include the disposal rate of a judge, the quality of judgments, and a variety of other factors, including the behavior of the judge towards a lawyer during court proceedings. However, while data on the disposal rates and judgments are easily available in the public forum, including on the National Judicial Data Grid, the behavior of a judge in the courtroom is not easily ascertainable because of a lack of transparency in judicial proceedings. Unless this important indicator of performance evaluation is publicly available, it would be difficult to evaluate the performance of a judge and would pose challenges to judicial accountability. As the Dalai Lama said, a lack of transparency results in distrust and a deep sense of insecurity. Though legal journalism is on the rise and reporting of judicial proceedings has gained traction almost by the minute, if not by the second, it has its limitations. Unless to have followed the arguments by legal luminaries such as Mr. Nani Palkhiwala and Mr. H.M. Sirvai, we fortunately have distinguished members of the bar in our midst even now. And I think it's important that we must live stream and record proceedings in every Indian court. Several high courts have already commenced the initiative, among them the Gujarat High Court, the High Court of Karnataka, the High Court of Madhya Pradesh, and the High Court of Orissa. And I think it is a matter of time that these practices, these best practices, are now shared across the nation. I thus feel that all courts across the country must open their proceedings for public viewership. I heartily congratulate Professor Balram Gupta for the publication of this book and recommend it to be included as a course reading in law schools. Perhaps the book signifies, in a fundamental way, the personality of the author, dignity, grace, and acknowledgement of the role of the legal profession in not merely nurturing life in society as it stands today, not in terms just of the history of this nation, but personally for all of us. And I think every page of this book embodies this quest for learning, this love for literature, this love for erudition, the scholarly attributes which make the personhood of Dr. Balram Gupta, as we know him so closely. I thank you, Professor Dr. Balram Gupta, for inviting me to make this presentation this morning. It's been a pleasure to read your book and to go through it. I'll only end with a little anecdote. I was talking to Chief Justice Shavak's Wajibdar just a few days after you presented the book to me, and he was quarantining in Washington, D.C. And I read out to him what you had said about him on the occasion of his farewell. And of course, Shavak said in his characteristic style, well, he said he has been very charitable to me. But I do believe that what you have said embodies such beautiful anecdotes, traits about personalities you've come into touch with, fundamental ideas about the direction where the Constitution and judicial review should be taking us. Not just in terms of today's values and today's principles, such as the principle of proportionality, but how we develop and build upon these founding bricks that have been laid for us step by step by those who have come before us. And it just is a reminder to us that we are really, in that sense, passengers. We are pilgrims in this path of engaging with and unfolding the Constitution. It's a sobering reflection for each one of us that, important as the role that is assigned to us is, it's important to us to look at the broader picture and realize that we are only a speck in this universe of law and justice. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Honorable Dr. Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, for your warm and heartfelt words. Your bubbling energy infuses us also with your enthusiasm and passion. Thank you, sir, for being with us today. And if I may request all our dignitaries to once again hold the book up on the screen, because we missed you, sir, Justice Chandrachud, at the beginning, and it would be nice to have everyone share this occasion with us. Thank you so much. Thank you so very much, everyone. Law and Justice Publishing Company is a part of the universal group of publishing companies with 6.5 decades of dominant presence in the legal publishing world. Dr. Manish Arora, Partner Law and Justice Publishing and Director, Universal Publishing Company, is an alumnus of the Delhi University and Harvard Law School. He is an exceptional advocate, an editor, an educator, and an author. May I request you, sir, to thank our guests this morning. Dr. Manish Arora.
Thank you, Dr. Shruti, for elaboratively introducing me. Honorable Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, Honorable Justice Suryakant, Justice Madan V. Lokur, Justice Ravi Shankar Jha, Justice Anmol Ratan Singh, Professor Dr. Upendra Bakshi, Professor Dr. Balram K. Gupta, and Professor Dr. Shruti Bedi, and all the dignitaries here. Thank you very much. In fact, as a publisher, this is a great duty of ours to offer my sincere gratitude to all the eminent participants of this launch program. In fact, we publishers are duty bound to build bridges not only between the author and the reader, but also between the past, present, and the future. As all these learned speakers just said, that this kind of a book which is linking to past, present, and future, right? So, and I must tell you that a book, because obviously being a publisher, I'll be talking about book more. So the book is not just a storehouse of static knowledge, but it also a treasure trove of gems. In fact, it's a wonderful master of ceremony today's launch. And then obviously to Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, Judge, Supreme Court of India. Thank you, sir, for your presence here and your informative address. And especially, I think with your worthy words, will surely see the streaming of Supreme Court, the judgments and Supreme Court proceedings, in fact, to be streamed, and the law students and the general public would definitely be enlightened for that. And it is indeed a great honor for all of us, in fact, for which we extend you a profound thanks from the core of our hearts, sir. We thank Justice Suryakant, Judge, Supreme Court of India, for honoring us by his gracious presence today and your thought-provoking address. And also, sir, your special thought on collaboration of judicial academies with India and abroad to make things quite extensive. Our heartfelt thanks to Justice Madan B. Lokar, former Judge, Supreme Court of India, and the present judge at Supreme Court of Fiji, to be here to grace the occasion. And sir, thank you for the worthy forward you have given to the book and for your quite informative address today. We also place on record our deep appreciation for Chief Justice of Punjab and Haryana High Court, Justice Ravi Shankar Jha, to be present here amongst us today. And sir, your enlightening and excellent shlokas, which were the light of the day today. Thank you so much, sir. We are grateful to Justice Anmol Ratan Singh, Punjab and Haryana High Court, for being here to bless the book and to share your journey with Professor Gupta during your college days and further on. Our special thanks to Professor Dr. Upendra Bakshi. In fact, to my professor, I could say, because a couple of speakers said that that Professor Bakshi taught us, and I'm also one of them, where Professor Bakshi taught me jurisprudence at the Faculty of Law, University of Delhi. And that was the time when he was the Vice Chancellor of the Delhi University, but still used to come early in the morning for the first class to give his jurisprudence lecture and back to his VC office. Thank you, sir, and cheers for a Patiala peg again for that. And thank you for your thoughtful and enriching lecture. We also thank Mr. M.G. Arora, who is the founder of Universal Group. He founded the Universal Group 66 years back, of which Law and Justice Publishing is the youngest part. And he's also present here. Maybe he must be on the, because we have a lot of people today who are hundreds and thousands of them who are on the YouTube, not on this forum, but on the YouTube, who are watching us. So thanks to my father, M.G. Arora, who is to bless us on this special occasion. And also I must thank amongst those who've got time for this particular occasion, and amongst them there are a lot of judges, lawyers, media person, public men, professionals, even educational administrators, scholars, even law students. A lot of them are there, and we are most thankful to each one of them to being a part of the launch function today. So in fact, I might have, to be very frank, I might have participated in more than 100 book launches as a publisher since 30 years. But this is the one where I will have to make it, I'll have to just say over to Dr. Shruti Bedi, because otherwise we used to say, okay, then we'll see you at a high tea. But today, being a virtual thing, definitely over to Dr. Shruti Bedi. Thank you once again. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Arora. And indeed, I think the legacy left behind by all the luminaries gathered today for this occasion continues through their writings, through their words, and through their thoughts. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And I now draw this event to a close. Thank you all.